Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Sustainable Activism webinar. My name is Lisa Levinson, and I'm going to be your host tonight. And I work with In Defense of Animals, and I run the Sustainable Activism campaign. And what we do is we put together these webinars every month to provide some great resources, some emotional resources and self-care tools for activists. And today I'm really thrilled to make that connection between the environment and also animal rights. So we've invited a very special guest speaker today to make this connection for us. I'm going to go ahead and introduce her to you. Her name is Shelley Ryan, and this webinar will be on climate change. And Shelley is an environmental educator who has trained with the world-renowned environmental advocate and presidential candidate, Al Gore. Shelley has presented climate change, sustainability, and clean energy lectures at museums, schools, universities, and to activist organizations in the United States and abroad. She specializes in the impact of climate change on the atmosphere, weather, and on people around the world, which we don't often hear about in the United States. So it's with my pleasure to introduce you to Shelley Ryan. Hello, Shelley.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here, to be doing this with you.
So we're excited to see what you have to share with us today. You're welcome to start your presentation and click the share screen button.
Okay. Okay.
Wonderful.
I don't know what you're seeing there, but
we are seeing what you're seeing.
Oh, okay. All right. Can I pull up my
yes, please do.
material now? Okay. And how do I get out of this screen to do that? Just say hide. Just say hide.
You could try that. I think it looks like you can go over to the same way that we did in the practice. You can open up the other program.
Okay, there we are.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll bring this full screen for you. There we go.
Wonderful.
So, here we are on our beautiful planet, and I'd like to say that this presentation that I'm going to do is just a very thin slice of the issue of climate change. Climate change impacts just about every aspect of our lives, and but I'm just going to talk about just a few aspects of it. If you're interested in going deeper, there are thousands of books, papers, research papers, YouTube videos, and TED Talks on every aspect of climate change that you would want, that you could be interested in. So, so let me get started with my part of it here. This again is a picture of the Earth taken from space, obviously, from one of the Apollo missions. And it shows very well how our planet is enveloped in a beautiful atmosphere. And the way that our atmosphere is kept comfortable for us and all the other creatures on it because of the so-called greenhouse gases. And you might hear some people say that that this is the science of climate change is very complex, and at some levels it is. But at the basic level, why our planet is as comfortable as it is for us, and the science of that is actually very simple. So, sorry, this didn't. So this is a slice of the of our atmosphere. This is taken from space, side on to the planet. You can see that the our atmosphere is actually very thin. When we look up at the atmosphere in the daytime, straight up, it looks like it goes on forever, but in fact, it does not. And if you drove a car from the surface of the planet at about 60 miles an hour straight up, you'd reach the end of the atmosphere in less than 10 minutes. So it is a very, very thin atmosphere, more like the skin on an apple. So how does this work? How does the science of global warming work? Again, as I said, it's quite simple. Solar radiation in the form of light waves passes through the atmosphere. The atmosphere is very open to that. Nothing is captured. Everything passes through clearly and easily. And most of this radiation is absorbed by the Earth and warms it. But some of that energy is radiated back into space by the Earth in the form of infrared waves or heat. However, some of that outgoing infrared radiation is trapped by the Earth's atmosphere and warms it, and that's the so-called greenhouse effect. And what we're going to be dealing with mainly today are the greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane. There are others too, but they are of less potency and of less importance to this presentation. So there's another way to show this. The Earth with its atmosphere, there's Venus with its atmosphere, and then these are the three inner planets to the Sun, and showing here the denseness of their atmosphere and their relative temperatures. The Earth is 15 degrees centigrade. That's an average, of course. That's about 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Venus is a little closer to the Sun, but it has a temperature of about 850 plus degrees Fahrenheit. And then Mercury, closest to the Sun, is actually cooler with its thinner atmosphere. Even though it's closest to the Sun, the temperature there in Fahrenheit is about 330 degrees. So why is Venus so much hotter than the other planets? It's because 80% of its atmosphere is composed of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide on our planet is only about 1/3 of 1% of the atmosphere. But you can see here with this illustration just how powerful carbon dioxide is. It makes a heck of a lot of difference in the temperature on any given planet. But unfortunately, we humans are dumping over 110 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the atmosphere every 24 hours. In fact, carbon dioxide, CO2, is being released into the atmosphere faster than at any time in at least the last 66 million years, which is about as far back as the scientists have been able to take their investigations on atmospheric temperatures. And where is all this carbon dioxide and methane coming from? The biggest sources of greenhouse gases are air and land transportation, the mining of coal-fired power plants, industrial processes that use coal and other, quote, dirty energies, the burning of forests, especially in the tropics, nowadays is a big driver of this. Oil production, of course, land and air transportation, and something that I'm going to talk about just a little bit later, which is industrial agriculture, which how industrial agriculture is driving, a big driver of climate change, is just starting to be discussed in the media and by organizations and different speakers on this topic. So we're putting out all this carbon dioxide and methane, whatnot, and it's having an impact on the planet. A big impact. The largest source of global warming pollution is the burning of fossil fuels. And you can see here from 1850 up to about the present time how this problem has grown. And especially after the Second World War, we really started putting out this pollution into the atmosphere. There's another way of looking at it. The global surface temperatures, departure from average, again from the end of the 1800s to about the present. You can see here how the temperatures have been really ramping up the closer we get to the present time. And what happens when all that heat is in the atmosphere? Well, we feel it as very warm temperatures. So let's look at some of these temperatures worldwide, what has been going on. This is San Francisco last year in September. San Francisco reached 106 degrees. It was an all-time record and 37 degrees Fahrenheit above average for the date. There's Sydney, Australia, again about a year ago. Temperatures reached a record of 117 degrees in parts of Australia. All these temperatures I'm going to be showing you are records for these particular areas. Here's the area of Hatay, Turkey. July of last year, it became so warm that the road actually melted. The tar actually melted on the road. The temperature in Antalya, Turkey, reached almost 114 degrees last July. Again, these are all records for these areas. Kuwait City reached a temperature of 124 degrees last July. And the temperature, these hot temperatures continued, and in August, birds actually fell from the sky, dying from heat exposure. In July of 2016, in this town of Iraq, they reached 129 degrees. On about the same time, in 2016, this city in Kuwait reached over 129 degrees. These are unprecedented temperatures and really unlivable temperatures when you think about the fact that most of the people in these areas cannot escape into their buildings with air conditioning. They just have to suffer through it. And of course, many people in these areas have died because of these extreme temperatures. In June of 2017, the United Arab Emirates reached almost 125 degrees. Iraq last year, again, 124 degrees, record-breaking heat. In Pakistan, about the same time last year, they reached over 129 degrees. That was in May of last year. Then in Thailand, this was 2 years ago, Thailand broke an all-time high temperature record in April of 112 degrees. And the records were also broken in Cambodia and Laos. Keep in mind here that these countries are tropical and in the tropical latitudes, and with the humidity and the high temperatures, this would have been extraordinarily uncomfortable for them. But what happens to the air as far as heating goes with climate change is also happening in the ocean. This is a graph just from 1960 to the present time of the temperatures in the ocean going down to over 2,000 meters. That would be over 6,000 feet. And you can see here that the temperatures in the ocean down to that level, the temperatures have been ramping up over the time period. But half of this increase has occurred in the last 20 years only. So how does the climate crisis impact hurricanes? Because in the United States here, we've had some very strong hurricane impacts. Warmer oceans lead to more intense hurricanes because warmer oceans evaporate more moisture into the sky. Hurricanes intensify much more rapidly. Warmer air holds more moisture, leading to heavier downpours. Storm surge increases due to sea level rise. I'll go into sea level rise very shortly, but one of the reasons that the oceans are rising is because warmer water expands. So the seas are expanding with the oceans warming, and in some areas worse than others. And last on this list is a wavier jet stream can hold storms in place longer. And I'll go into that and what a wavier jet stream means in just a second. But let's first look at Hurricane Harvey, which hit in August, September of last year. Harvey crossed waters in the Gulf of Mexico. They're up to 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than normal. I'm sorry, that was not in September, it was August, excuse me. I want that wrong. Harvey dropped a total of 33 trillion gallons of water on the United States, equal to the flow of Niagara Falls, for 509 days. Personally, I can't wrap my head around that, but it's obviously an awful lot of water. So here we are with the jet stream, and we're looking straight down on the North Pole. The jet stream is the red ribbon. Because the ice sheets on both poles, but we're looking here at the North Pole, the ice sheet has been melting. The gradient between the cold air at the North Pole and the warmer air from further south has destabilized the jet stream, and it's caused these troughs, these wavy troughs to form, which holds weather patterns in place longer. And so Hurricane Harvey was held in place for almost 5 days because of this wavy jet stream, this trough in the jet stream, and it allowed it being held in place that long allowed it to dump that much water into the area of Houston. In most of the Houston area, Harvey's 5-day rain total was 1 in a 25,000-year event. In some nearby areas, it was a 1 in 500,000-year event. That doesn't mean that in those 25,000 or 500,000 years ago, these events happened. These are odds. These are the odds that that rain event would have happened in those areas. So here are some pictures from the people who suffered through that. This is people in a nursing home had to wait in the water as it came into their home before they could be rescued. They were trapped there for hours. Here's one of the people being another elderly person being taken out in her wheelchair. Dickinson, Texas, suburb, I guess, of Houston. Nederland, Texas, close to Houston, received a total of almost 61 inches of rain, the greatest single storm rainfall total on record in the United States. Then came Hurricane Irma. Irma remained a Category 5 hurricane for 3 straight days, which was a new global record since satellite tracking began. And it wreaked havoc in the Caribbean, as we all know. French Saint Martin, Tortola, another island, Havana, Cuba, and then in the United States, this is a picture of the Florida Keys. FEMA estimated that almost 90% of the homes in Florida were either completely destroyed or significantly damaged by this hurricane. And of course, they're still recovering. Then came Hurricane Maria on the heels of the other two hurricanes, again wreaking havoc within the Caribbean itself. This is Dominica, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. Parts of Puerto Rico received 36 inches of rain in 24 hours. Here in California, if we receive 2 inches of rain in 24 hours, everything is, we're alarmed. But these people had to receive 36 inches in 24 hours, and of course it devastated the island. And they still have not completely recovered from this. And it may be a long time before they do. That hurricane intensified from a Category 1 to a Category 5 hurricane in less than 18 hours. That's also a record. And together, these three hurricanes, Harvey, Irma, and Maria, caused as much as $350 billion in losses. And of course, that the total is still coming in because these areas have still not recovered from that devastation. So changing here a little bit, the global record, this global temperature increases and the evaporation from large bodies of water and the ocean are causing other precipitation anomalies. And this is a graph from 1950 to 1916, and showing how these precipitation anomalies have gotten stronger and more pronounced, especially in the last few years. As temperatures increase, there's more evaporation, as I said, causing these events. So the downpours get bigger with more water in the atmosphere. Here's San Jose, California. About a year ago, they had massive rain event with flooding. This is Montana a couple of years ago. This is called a rain bomb, and it causes tremendous flooding. It's an awful lot of water occurring in a massive downpour. Here's another one in Phoenix, Arizona, 2 years ago. They're called rain bombs. This illustrates it even better why they're called that, because it looks more like an atomic explosion than a mere rain event. Of course, these cause flooding. The Northeast U.S. saw a 71% increase in extreme rainfall events from about 1958 to 2012, and that increase has continued. Here's a picture from Middletown, Pennsylvania. Last year in July, they received almost 4.5 inches of rain in 1 hour, and it caused tremendous flooding. Here's a picture from that was from West Virginia a couple of years ago, where they had massive flooding and tore some of the homes off of their foundations, and that particular one was caught on fire. Houston, Texas has not only been hit with these hurricanes, but it's also been hit by these flooding events. That was back in 2016. But this problem is happening all over the world. It's just not in the United States. And here's a picture from Sierra Leone last year, where they had massive flooding, and you see these huge boulders coming down from the hills and tearing through homes, killing people, sweeping away people and homes and cars. But this is happening again all over the world, this type of massive flooding from these massive rain events. It's Colombia last year, Peru, Last year, at least 94 Peruvians died in flooding, blamed on the high temperatures in the ocean, coming off the ocean. This is a big flood that happened in Chile. Looks like this is actually a video. It looks like it's not gonna run, but that's okay. It's we know what mud and water look like. In Mount Abu, India, last year in July, they received 83.3 inches of rain. The region's average annual rainfall is 61 inches. So in 4 days, they received more rain than they receive annually there. But again, this is happening in other parts of the world too. This is last year in Thailand, last year in the Philippines, Malaysia, China, Japan. This is a mudslide caused by these torrential rains bringing the mud down from the mountains. There's at least 30 people were killed in Japan during that rain event and flooding. But it's also happening in Europe. Here's Germany last year, root of Germany. Massive flooding in the streets in that town. And then in England, 2.5 years ago, over 13 inches of rain fell in 24 hours in this particular town. That was that country's heaviest 24-hour rainfall on record. Here's Spain. Again, you see the water coming through the streets there, and where the cars have been pushed aside. So let's look at another aspect of what the warming atmosphere is doing at the poles. This is Greenland at the North Pole, and the graph shows the loss of ice off of the Greenland, the ice sheet there over time. It's actually just a period of 10 years. You can see how that has declined very rapidly, the ice on Greenland. So, but let's go to Antarctica. The West Antarctic ice sheet is starting to melt, has gone into irretrievable meltdown. That's the area here on the near left that we're looking at. That's the West Antarctic ice sheet. Let's look at that. Let's look at Antarctica compared to the United States. You can see here from this map overlay that Antarctica is significantly larger than the United States, and the West Antarctic ice sheet is the portion that takes up all the western states and the United States, excluding Alaska, of course, and but the West Antarctic ice sheet is about as big as the western continental United States. That's a tremendous amount of ice to release into the ocean, and it is estimated that when that melts fully, there'll be at least 6 feet of extra water, extra height in the ocean. That the oceans will rise about 6 feet. With the melting of the Greenland Glacier, that amount may be even more pronounced. We don't know yet. Just depends on what human beings really do about the issue as to what happens with the oceans. But all of the glaciers all over the world are also melting, and I'm just going to show you a picture of one of them. I could show you dozens. This is the Portage Glacier in Alaska. In 1914, you can see that this glacier filled this valley between these two mountain ranges. But here it is in 2004, where this large glacier has entirely melted back into the many miles back into the mountains. Again, this is happening worldwide. And let's look at time periods, ancient time periods, the climate and sea level comparisons. Let's look first at the Eemian. This was an interglacial period, 130 to 114,000 years ago. At that time, at the height of the Eemian, the temperatures were about 2 degrees Celsius warmer than we are now pre-industrial age. So if we go back, say, into the 1800s, their temperatures there were 2 degrees higher than we were. And what happened to the sea level with that kind of added temperature? The sea was 5 to 9 meters higher than it is today. If we go back even further to the Pliocene, 5.3 to 2.6 million years ago, the temperatures at the height of the Pliocene were 3 to 4 degrees Celsius higher than they are now, just a little bit higher, as you notice, than the Eemian time period. But the sea level was up to 15 to 25 meters higher than it is now. So the point of this is that we don't want to go there. This, with even a 2 degrees centigrade addition in temperature to our climate right now, would and a higher temperature than that, all of that would put all countries in the world in the danger zone as far as taking people's homes away from them, their land and their homes, and causing refugee and food issues as well. So we want to stop this as soon as, slow it down and stop it as soon as we can. So as the oceans warm, as the air warms, this warmth also causes evaporation on the land, and which brings about droughts. And the entire world is seeing droughts at the same time that we're seeing flooding. California is on the tail end of a drought that lasted several years, and there were a lot of crop failures due to that. But here's another picture from crop failure in North Dakota. Again, the western United States is really getting hit with these drought events and crop failures. But it's happening again all over the world in different areas. Here's the Po River in Italy. The Po River is the longest river in Italy, but it, at least as of the middle of last year, it was not a river at all. It was just a riverbed. Here we are at the Vinuela Reservoir in Spain, down to almost nothing. This is also from last year. This is a large lake in France, now a lake bed. Middle of last year. Another reservoir in South Korea. The water level in this reservoir got down to just 11% of normal, which is very bad news. All of this is very bad news just for the people who use water for drinking, but also for crops. Here's Inner Mongolia, China. At the same time that some areas of China have been seeing terrible flooding and large rain events, this area of China is has endured their worst drought on record for that country. Here we are in Vietnam. This is the Mekong Delta. It's not a delta anymore. It is dried up. That was 2 years ago. Here's India last year. In some areas they've been having flooding, but with the heat, they're also in the midst of their worst drought in 140 years, which is probably when they started keeping records there. Here's the Cedro Reservoir in Brazil. Many of the reservoirs in Brazil have dried up like this or come very close to it. And the problem here in Brazil, as in other tropical countries, is deforestation. Trees, especially in the tropics, transpire moisture into the atmosphere, which causes it to rain. It acts like a feedback loop. So when the forests are cut down, the rain patterns shift, and the rains don't come as they used to, and they don't fill the reservoirs. I was living in Costa Rica in 2014 when this drought has been going on. This problem has been going on in Brazil for a while, and I was in touch with a lady who lived in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is a city of over 20 million people, and they didn't have any water in the city, and the person that I was talking to there, my friend there, had to actually leave and come back to the United States. I don't know what happened to the people who couldn't leave. I guess water was trucked in. Maybe some of them died. But this is a very big problem in tropical areas of the world. This deforestation leading to droughts. So the same thing has happened, and is happening in South Africa. This is a reservoir in South Africa last year. The Western Cape province is facing its worst water shortage in 113 years. And I just read a story a few weeks ago about Cape Town, South Africa, and they only have a little over 90 days left of water in their reservoirs. And if it doesn't rain in that area, and again their rain patterns have been disrupted too, if it doesn't rain, they don't know where they're going to get their water for the townspeople. There are a little over 4 million people in Cape Town. So now we go to North Africa. Here is a Syrian farmer. He said, I had 400 acres of wheat, and now it's all desert. That was in 2010. And we know what happened in Syria, what has happened in Syria that has like a cascade domino effect of the 2006 to 2010 drought there that turned 60% of Syria's fertile land into desert and drove 1.5 million people into Syria's already crowded cities. And we've seen on the news the problems that has created there with food problems, food riots, other upheavals, and driving a lot of people in Syria to immigrate to other countries, particularly to Europe, which has caused great stress and problems for the countries in Europe. But this all started with the drought. Now here's something that I hadn't heard about this problem until I read this slide from Al Gore. As of October 2017, 4 African and Middle Eastern countries are approaching famine, and 20 million people are nearing starvation from the droughts there and the heat and the failed crops. It is the first time since World War II that so many large-scale hunger crises have occurred simultaneously. We need to hear about these things on the news, and we're not. And it keeps us in a bubble here in the United States when we don't know what's happening all around the world relative to climate change. So let's switch gears here a little bit and talk about fires, because hotter years typically have more fires. And the hotter years have been ramping up, and the fires are following them. In fact, in the U.S. West, the fire season is now 105 days longer than it was in the 1970s because of the higher temperatures. Here's a picture from Santa Rosa, California. I live fairly close to this. This was last October, where there were tremendous fires going on there. And that was in Sonoma County. My county also of Lake saw fires, but here's next door to Sonoma County is Napa County. They had huge fires there. Almost between all these fires in Northern California, almost 1 million acres of burned, including parts of these cities. This is 2.5 years ago in a town close by where I live, here in Middletown, California. Many people lost their homes then. But again, this is happening throughout the West, and these fires. This is North Bonneville, Washington. This in last September. This picture is a little funny. I guess these golfers are so used to these fires that they just decided they'd finish their golf game before they do anything, before they'd leave. But again, these fires are happening all over the western United States. I'm just showing you a few pictures. This is a town in Oklahoma last year. Many homes burned down. And 2017 is the costliest year on record for fighting wildfires in the United States, and again, predominantly in the West. But again, it's happening all over the world. This is not just in our country. Here's a town in Croatia last year where there have been droughts. This is St. Tropez, France. I believe this area is quite a tourist destination, but obviously not at this time. This is Italy, Sardinia, Italy. These pictures are all from last year. Portugal, they had their terrible fires. And then South America. This is about a year ago in Chile. Over 1 million acres of land burned, and with thousands being left homeless. So again, some areas there were in flood, while other areas were in drought and experiencing fires. Here are, this is British Columbia, Canada. And here's Fort McMurray in Alberta, Canada, which is in the middle of the country. People are trying to escape their homes burning and the forest is burning. But Russia has seen its share of fires, drought, extreme heat, and fires. This is a picture from space of a large wildfire in eastern Russia. This was from 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. But Russia has had this is an ongoing problem for Russia. And in 2010, over 55,000 people died in Russia from fire and from smoke inhalation. This is a lady from a town there running from her burning home. 4 months later, world food prices reached record highs after Russia halted grain exports and the Ukraine restricted exports after their record drought and fires. So climate change is having an impact on our food worldwide. But let's look at how our food is having an impact on climate change. And I'm going to talk here specifically about big ag and beef consumption, the running of cattle on land, especially. Here we have a picture of South America where the forest has been cut down to run these cattle. Forests are cut down also to raise food for cattle, primarily soy and other foods that are fed only to cattle, not to people. So these cattle will be released. They'll eat the grass, trample the land. And then the next patch of forest will be cut down or burned down to run more cattle. Of course, we have cattle in the United States, lots of them. This is a big feedlot, a huge feedlot down in mid California. which can be seen and smelled from quite a distance. Thousands and thousands of cattle on that feedlot. So how many cattle are killed worldwide for meat per year? Well, that number, which might surprise you, is 50 to 60 billion cattle are slaughtered every year for human consumption. In the United States, that number is about 9 billion. So there are there's more livestock, there are more cattle in the United States alone than there are human beings on the planet. And the problem with cattle, there are a number of problems with running cattle on the land, especially that many. Cattle produce methane in their digestive systems, and methane is a strong greenhouse gas. It's actually stronger than carbon dioxide, but it's shorter lived in the atmosphere. However, with this many cattle being raised for human consumption, it's releasing a tremendous amount of methane into the atmosphere and degrading an awful lot of land from their eating the grass and the other plants, and trampling the land and fouling water also, whether or not they're living free on the range, as the saying goes, or if they're in feedlots or confined lots. So let's look at this slide. This is from 2016. The information is a tiny bit old. It states that 14.5% of global emissions come from the livestock sector, which is greater than the exhaust from all vehicles. That number is now, at this point, it's closer to 18% of global emissions from the livestock sector. But if you factor in the cutting and burning of rainforests to run these animals and to grow food for them and to export that beef to other countries, commercial feed operations to grow the feed, to transport the feed to the cattle if they're on feedlots in confined situations, and the transportation of getting cattle into the feedlots and taking them to slaughter, and then transporting their dismembered bodies to the stores around our country, the United States, and the world. That the livestock sector actually accounts for 40 to 50% of greenhouse gases worldwide, which is a strong driver of climate change. Now, what can we do about that? Well, we can eat less beef. That would be very helpful. In fact, many people are doing just that, and veganism and vegetarianism is a growing phenomenon in not just the United States, but in the world, and this is one of the reasons for it. Looked at this another way, the top 5 meat and dairy corporations emit more greenhouse gases than Exxon, Shell, or BP. Looked at even another way at carbon footprint by food group. You can see here that the 76% comes from animal products. 76% of the carbon footprint of food comes from animal products. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, and other foods are a lot less and much easier on the climate as far as global warming is concerned. So big ag in all the ways that it is impacting the land through pollution with spraying pesticides and herbicides on plants, which poisons the land and the people living in these areas and the field workers. And then we come up to the top right here. This picture is of either a hog or a chicken farm, and the runoff from those those businesses is considerable, poisoning, polluting waterways, the land around it, the people who unfortunately live near these places, and contributing again to global warming. And then there's the cutting down of forests to run cattle, and the cattle themselves, which are damaging land because they're very large animals and there's so many of them, and also with their emissions of methane through their digestive processes. All this contributing to climate change and pointing to the fact that we need to change what we're doing. And we're not the only people who have on the planet and throughout history who have come to a crossroads with their environment. This, of course, is a picture of the Easter Island. When the first peoples came to Easter Island, it was forested. But over time, through their cultural practices, they cut down the forest, and it's not quite known what happened to them. Some of them undoubtedly died. Maybe some of them were able to get into their boats and go to other islands or find other places to live. But it was a turning point for them, and we're at a turning point now. But we don't live on an island, and we know except that the whole Earth is an island of sorts, you might say. But we know what's happening and what we're doing, and that we need to change what we need to change and fix how we're going about our business of spewing so much carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And fortunately, we have the solutions at hand already to do this. And what are they? I'm going to just show you just some of them. I can't show you everything because there's an awful lot going on, thank heavens, to slow down and stop climate change. But one thing that is happening worldwide, and that is wind energy. And the 2000 projection, back in 2000, it was projected that worldwide wind capacity would reach about 30 gigawatts by 2010. The reality is that by 2010, that goal was exceeded by a factor of 16 times. We see here with this graph that since about 2000, just a little bit before the year 2000, the wind energy capacity really started growing, and very recently it has taken off substantially and is continuing that strong growth. And that was worldwide. This is U.S. wind energy capacity in about the same time period. You can see here how it has been growing as well. Very, very strong growth. While at the same time, the cost of installation of these wind turbines has been decreasing strongly. And many countries have wind energy. In 2017, in the month of June, 100% of Scotland's electricity came from the wind. This is a solar farm, wind farm in England. In 2016, the United Kingdom got more electricity from wind than from coal, which certainly spared their air, I'm sure, some pollution. Here is the Malbasa Wind Project in Costa Rica, Guanacaste, Costa Rica. I lived for 2.5 years in Costa Rica, came back in 2016 to the United States, and I lived very close to this area. Costa Rica uses every kind of clean energy you can imagine. Wind is just one of them. Hydropower, geothermal, solar. They have just about everything going for them. And most of the time in the last few years, they've been running close to 100% on clean energy. And last year, they ran the first 300 days on clean energy alone. And they're just about up to being 100% clean energy. They're very close to being able to do that. So they're very progressive in that way. Globally, wind could supply worldwide electricity consumption 40 times over. Wind could supply worldwide electricity consumption 40 times over. All we have to do is implement this great way of generating electricity. Now let's look at another way to do that, solar. The 2002 projection of solar energy was that the market would grow 1 gigawatt per year by 2010. But what really happened is that the goal was exceeded by that date 17 times over, and by 2016 it was exceeded 75 times over, and is continuing on to grow. Is continuing to grow. Here is a graph from 1980 to the present, or 2016. You can see again that PV installation worldwide really started ramping up in the early 2000s of this century, and is growing tremendously and exponentially, while the cost of the solar cells has been decreasing rapidly and making the growth possible. The U.S. has about 47 gigawatts of solar energy capacity, enough to power a little over 9 million homes. That's not much, but again, this is growing. Solar capacity is growing in the United States. And Morgan Stanley last year projected that by 2020, renewables will be the cheapest form of new power generation across the globe. And Morgan Stanley also stated last year that wind and or solar power are already the cheapest new sources of power in large portions of the U.S., Mexico, Australia, all of Latin America, and India. But it's also growing and being used in some places that don't even have electricity, have never had electricity. So some countries are leapfrogging over the old technology of utilization of coal for energy. And you can see here, this is a couple of thatched roof homes in Bangladesh. They don't need much, but they've got their solar panel, which supplies them with all the electricity that they need. And here's another country. This is Sierra Leone in Africa. This is a little village there. They didn't have electricity from conventional sources, but by golly, they've got their laptops powered by their little solar panels there on the ground. So they can be in touch with the world. They don't have to be isolated, and do even better, I'm sure, over time than they are now. China, of course, is one of the largest manufacturers, exporters, and users of solar in the world. And that's continuing to grow. India is not far behind. They're both on track to overachieve their Paris climate change commitments. And of course, there's Europe. Germany is rather famous for its solar. And on May 8th, 2016, the share of Germany's electricity from renewables peaked at 86%, and of course growing. This is a slide showing California's grid interface with solar. On May 13, 2017, California received 67% of its electricity generation from this this solar farm and other farms like it. And the Vatican has solar. They also have wind capacity. The Vatican has stated that they want to be the first country in the world that is totally off the grid, working off of their clean energies. And as Al Gore has said, the Vatican has God on their side, so they very well may achieve that goal. So let's look at this. How much solar energy is there? Enough solar energy reaches Earth every hour to fill all the world's energy needs for a full year. Enough energy reaches the Earth from the sun every hour to fill all the world's energy needs for a full year. So I personally say, let's do this thing. Solar, wind, whatever else we've got going. Let's do it. We can do it. It is doable. And a few years ago, you probably heard people saying, oh, if we go full tilt with these renewables, it's going to ruin the economy. Well, it actually, powering up these renewables is doing just the opposite. Globally, almost 10 million people worldwide work directly or indirectly in the renewable energy sector. And that's growing, of course, because the renewable energy sector is growing. In the U.S., solar energy jobs are growing 17 times faster than the overall economy itself. In the U.S., there are twice as many jobs in solar as in coal mining. As coal mining de-escalates, as it powers down, then these people in the coal mining industry can be retrained to work in solar and wind and other clean energy fields, and all of which pay very, very well. So the new electric, there we go. The new electric generation capacity in the U.S. is coming predominantly from wind and solar, almost about 70%. Natural gas is following with about 25%, and then all other types of new electric generating capacity is from these other hydro, coal, etc. So it's predominantly solar and wind. They're leading the field. But there are other ways to generate electricity, and other countries, including the United States, at a lesser degree, are doing this. This is a geothermal plant in the Philippines. It's tapping into the heat from the inside of the earth. And another way to counter global warming is not just through the type of energy that we use, but also by replanting of forests that have been cut down in the United States and all over the world. The left-hand picture is showing a plot of land in South America that was deforested. All the large trees were cut down, but that was in 2007. And then on the right-hand side, just 5 years later, after the planting of trees, you can see that the forests are starting to come back. So this needs to be done on a much bigger scale, and it is it is all over the world. Forests and the land that they sit on sequester or pull down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and hold it in the bodies of the trees and in the land itself. Another way to sequester carbon and slow down this issue of global warming, climate change, is with regenerative farming. Big ag has a tendency to lose carbon into the atmosphere. Regenerative farming, otherwise known as ecological organic farming, actually sequesters more carbon in the soil than big agricultural farming does. And of course, what they grow and how they grow it does not impact the land so much in a negative way. It's healthier for the people who live on the periphery of these farms, and the food, of course, there are no pesticides or herbicides used in these farms, and so the food is, quote, cleaner, a little bit healthier than from the food coming from big ag. So what can we do, and what's being done about this? We've looked at some of the things that are being done on a big scale, um, and this is Paris, of course, and the Paris Climate Agreement. Almost all countries at first in the world signed on to this agreement. Eventually, all of them did, and the agreement is to be carbon neutral by the year 2050, 2050. And different countries are working at different rates to do that. And Morgan Stanley, again, said last year, notwithstanding President Trump's stated intention to withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord, we expect the U.S. to exceed the Paris commitment. And how is that expected? How can that be? Well, it's going to come from the states and the cities within this country. These are the U.S. cities in our country that are committed to 100% renewable energy by 2050 or before, just as soon as they can do it. These are the ones that have committed, and these are the ones that are already there. There are about 10 cities in the United States now. There may even be more. Those are the ones that I know of that are actually 100% utilizing clean energies for all their electricity generation. There are all told about 100 cities in the United States that are committed to this or have already done it. And there are 14 states representing 1/3 of the American people that have formed the United States Climate Alliance to work together on this issue. That includes Puerto Rico. And I'm sure the other states will be a big help to them in their problem and coming out of the big hit that they've taken from the hurricanes last year. So we've got a lot going on here at the bigger level, but we can all do something. We can all do something because we're all part of this. We are all contributing to climate change in some way. So we all have the capacity to do something to help slow it down and to stop it, to ameliorate it. That's the good news. That's the good news, that we can do something about this. So what are those things that we can do? Many things. When you hear people saying that climate change doesn't exist, that it's not happening, then don't let them say that. Don't let that denial go unchallenged. Tell them what you know. Tell them about this presentation that you've seen, and that you know that indeed climate change is happening, but that we can do something about it, and that we should. It's our responsibility. And use your social and your traditional media to get the word out about the problem. It shows there, use the reality hashtag, write letters to the editor, call television and radio stations and ask them why they're not showing these events, these catastrophic events happening around the world, that you want them to do that we need to know what's happening so that we can be part of the solution. And you can also join the Climate Reality Project. That is Al Gore's organization. That's where I got most of these slides, not all of them, but most of them. And other environmental and other types of organizations are working on this problem. And if you can only give them some money to support their efforts, that's great. But if you can work with them in some way, become part of their efforts on climate change to stop this, then they'll be glad, very happy to have you do that. They'll welcome you with open arms. Deepen your commitment even further. Make consumer choices that reduce energy. We've heard all of this a lot before, but it bears repeating. Consider the environmental impact of what you buy. Weatherize your home. Start a vegetable garden at your home, or buy your food, your produce from a farmer's markets or directly from the farm if you're able to do that. And reduce meat consumption. Go vegetarian or vegan. Vegetarianism and veganism is growing worldwide, in part because of this problem of the big eggs' impact on the climate with through the growing of the raising of farm animals, in particular beef. And changing laws is even more important than changing light bulbs. Tell your leaders that this is an issue that matters for you. Let them know that you will support them or oppose them, get rid of them perhaps, based on what they say and more importantly, what they do in solving this climate crisis. Words are cheap. We want to see actions. And if you like to get out and work with other people on this issue and take it to the streets, that option is open to you also. Here's the People's Climate March last year in Washington, D.C., where over 100,000 people converged on the White House. Over 1 million people worldwide supported this effort, this march. And this isn't coming up so good here, but get rid of your frozen and packaged foods and as much packaging again and other items that you buy as possible. And of course, get rid of as much as you can fast foods, heavily processed foods, and they are implicated in climate change because of so much packaging and marketing and shipping that goes into them. So strive instead to go for the produce at its source, as it is grown, as you can grow it, or as you can buy it. Get as close to the source as possible. And finally, I'm just about done here. Share your feedback with the Climate Reality Project. They have requested that you use this code or go to their website, the Climate Reality Project again, and give them your feedback on this presentation so that they can it can help perhaps improve the slideshow for next year. And it says here, by participating, you can choose to be a part of future studies about the slideshow and other messaging. And they promise they will not share your contact information with anyone, and they probably won't. So finally, I'd like to leave you all of you out there watching this, with a very positive note. And I use this quote actually, and this idea in more aspects of my life than just climate change. But let me read it. It may be too late for a new beginning, but it is never too late for a new ending. So let's create a positive ending for this climate change problem that we have right now. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Shelley. This is a wonderful presentation. We've really learned so much about the state of the world. And my name, for those of you who joined us, is Lisa Levinson. I'm the director of the Sustainable Activism Campaign in Defense of Animals, and we present these webinars to our community to provide some tools for our advocacy if we're trying to help people, encourage them to examine their food choices more closely. All of the information in this video is very helpful. So thank you, Shelley. We really appreciate your insight. And I really like that quote that you shared at the end because it's something that really is key. It's really key to the whole planet being able to save ourselves from global warming and the rising floodwaters and all of the images that you shared, which are so pertinent to today. So we have just a couple minutes for questions. If anyone has a question, if you're on the webinar with us, you can type it into the chat box. You can also, if you're on the phone, dial *4 and ask us a question that way. Or if you're with us on Facebook Live on the In Defense of Animals page, you can type a question into the comment section, and we'll hear you from there and be able to ask Shelley a question or two. So we'll just see if we have any questions from anyone. I will share while we're listening to that we have received some wonderful comments. People sharing that this is so reassuring that we're on the way to a new way of living, which is really wonderful. Some people have said, thank you so much for doing this, and that it brings consciousness. Some people are expressing their concerns about the environment. And we did have a question about the replay link. We will be posting the replay link on the Facebook event page, which if you're with us on the In Defense of Animals page on Facebook, you can look under events, and under the events, you'll see our Facebook event for this event, which is about our food choices and climate change. Or you can also watch the video that we've taken the live feed under our videos section. So those are two ways to check it out. And if you've registered for the event, you'll definitely get a replay link via email. So, and another comment about it's a great presentation and important to help educate people. Wonderful. And just checking in to see if we had any other questions. It looks like that might be it for now.
Okay.
So I again want to just thank you so very, very much for your time, and also to thank everyone else who's been with us for this broadcast today. And if you want to tune into more of our events, which we do have every week, we broadcast something live on our Facebook page, and we also have these they're monthly webinars, but each one is a different topic. You can find out more about this on our page of our website, which is idausa.org/events. And next week at the same time, we'll be hearing from Dr. Will Tuttle, who wrote the book, The World Peace Diet, and he will also discuss how our food choices affect our lives. But in this case, he'll be talking about how our food choices affect spirituality. And so we've had a nice overlapping of different ways to connect the dots about our food choices. What are we doing, and where can we go from here? So Shelley, it's been such a delight to have you as one of our featured speakers, and
I'm delighted to have been able to do this and to reach out to your base.
Yes, and thank you so much for everything that you do. You've been presenting these lectures and webinars around the world, so we're so fortunate to have you share this with our community. So if everyone who's watching, please share this. Spread the word by sharing it on social media, and more people can get this information and advocate for a plant-based diet. So thanks to everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful evening, and we hope you'll tune in with us next time. Take care. Good night, everyone.
Good night.